Welcome to the Salt and Mirrors and Cats podcast, interviews and audio dramas from our literary zine with stories, poems, and art about superstitions. Dear superstitionists, welcome to episode 3 of Salt and Mirrors and Cats podcast, sharing tales and exclusive interviews with some of our team members along with 4 mystery guest writers. In today's episode, we are finally revealing the first of our 4 guests, Lyndsey Croal, who has joined us for an interview and a reading of her story, Seedseeker, which will be published in our zine.
Lyndsey, what does the word superstition mean to you?
So superstition to me is believing in forces outside of our control and then adapting our behaviour or our responses to things in line with those beliefs, which in some ways I think then becomes like a ritual. And I think also superstition brings out quite strong connection to culture, to families, to place, and there's these links to traditions or practices that have often been passed down or along by family and friends. So yeah, that mixture there between ritual, tradition, and also a way to imagine or explain something more liminal or unpredictable in our worlds.
Are there any superstitions you believe in?
There are definitely superstitions I follow and tend to go along with in my day-to-day. For example, if I see a solitary magpie, I will salute it. If I spill salt, I'll throw a pinch of it over my shoulder. I'll probably avoid things like walking under ladders or putting shoes on tables. I'll touch wood so as not to tempt fate. So yeah, all things I do regularly, and they've, I guess, become these ritualized practices and almost automatic reactions to things that I see in the world without really even thinking about it.
Do you have any objects or lucky charms that are believed to bring good luck, such as wishbones or a rabbit's foot? And if you don't, is there a lucky charm you would like to have near you to ensure good luck comes your way?
So yeah, objects or lucky charms. I have a lucky necklace that was gifted to me by a good friend a while ago. I'm not really sure why, it's a bit random, but somehow on some days I just feel like it'll help with the day ahead. So I will wear it then, or I'll wear it for important events or life things. Similarly, I have a sort of ritualized practice of when I visit a beach, I don't like to leave empty-handed, and I like to collect like usually a pebble or a small thing, and then I keep some of them as good luck charms on windowsills and such, not for any particularly known superstition, just something I've always done and feel a connection to.
Are there any superstitions from your local area which you find particularly interesting?
Yeah, so I grew up by the coast, and there's one superstition linked to the sea that I've always enjoyed. It has some variations, and I can't remember when I first heard it, but I've always been aware of my mum and others kind of crushing up eggshells before they go in the compost or in the bin, which I in turn have always just done. And I later found out that the superstition around it was that after eating an egg, you had to make sure you crushed up the eggshells, otherwise witches might come and use the shells as boats to cause mischief or great harm. And I just always found that one quite interesting as a superstition, and how I still followed through with that practice of crushing the eggshells before really knowing why or the story behind it. And I guess that just shows it's sort of passed on down by other people doing it, and how these superstitions kind of become part of our lives unknowingly.
Do you have a favorite superstition not covered in your story?
It's a favorite superstition. So I really like the folkloric origin of guising in Scotland, which kind of stems from that superstitious beliefs around Samhain or Halloween. And during that time, it was believed that the boundaries between our world and the other world broke down, so spirits and demons could escape into our world more easily. And guising involved disguising in costumes so they could kind of slip past the spirits unrecognised, while being able to offer kind of tokens of food or other gifts to appease them. So this was then that early version of the modern day trick-or-treating. And yeah, I just really like the story behind that.
Can you tell us more about the inspiration behind your story?
So the inspiration for the story Seedseeker comes from the hagstone or seer stone from Scottish folklore and other lore, which is a pebble with a perfect hole bored into the centre that is said to allow you to see into the other world or to see into the future. And in this case, I wanted to use the stone to be that symbol for my main character deciding her future, but also with an element of taking control of her own destiny with it. And I also added a couple of extra superstitions, like the cat on board, a ship inspired by the idea that cats bring seafarers good luck. And she has her own superstition of saluting to the sky before jumping into the sea, which was one kind of added in to the world. And yeah, I've definitely written darker works inspired by superstitions and omens, but I like that this one was came out more as a gentle tale. It kind of integrates the superstitions a bit more subtly into this slightly dystopian but hopeful almost future world. And yeah, the story actually started out in a workshop at Chimera Fest, which was run by author Lorraine Wilson, in which part of it was exploring the idea of settings as characters. And in the workshops, we did some exercises linking settings with superstitions, real or made up, which were then able to add to that richness and authenticity of world building. And in one of the exercises, the writing exercises we were doing, I chose the Hagstone folklore and started writing this story in that workshop. And yeah, it evolved a little since then, but it was really nice to be able to just link back to it.
And finally, can you tell us a little bit more about other projects you are working on?
So yeah, other projects. I'm working away on a few projects, but this story is actually one that I'm including in a collection of Scottish folklore tales. The collection spans the seasons, starting sort of darkest stories in winter and gradually progressing to more hopeful summer tales like Seedseeker was. And yeah, the collection is on submission to publishers, hoping for maybe news on that front soon, but otherwise working on some short fiction. I've recently started a deep sea nautical thriller horror novel. That one's quite early stages though. I'm possibly thinking about a new audio script for a dark sci-fi tale similar to my debut novelette that came out earlier in the year. So yeah, keeping busy while on submission to publishers with various things, which is good.
Seedseeker. Ever since her first dive, Ailish knew she wanted to be a seedseeker. Standing now on the deck under the windsail, ready for the dive that will decide her future, her stomach twists like a tangle of seaweed. The crew of the Gaia look on, even the ship's cat, Marsden, whose narrow yellow eyes are trained on her and the rest of the new recruits. Beside her, Ollie, her best friend and biggest rival, is grinning stupidly, and he nudges her shoulder as they step forwards. But she ignores him. He wants to be a seedseeker too, and there's only space for one more on this ship. The others are less of a worry, at least. Runa wants to be a cartographer, and Sammy a fisher. It's only Ollie that could steal away her future. The captain steps forwards and hits the ceremonial bell. It's time. Ailish approaches, body tensed, and the captain hands her the weighted belt with a nod. Ailish nods back but tries not to catch her gaze, tries not to betray her nerves. She ties the belt around her waist and fits the goggles and breathing gear until her breaths echo in her ears. Then, with a final look at Ollie, who gives her another smile and a thumbs up, which she doesn't return, she kisses her fingers and salutes the sky for luck before jumping into the water below. The cold sting of the sea wraps around her, though to her it's a warm embrace. It always has been. It feels like going home. The water is clearer than usual. There's not been a storm for a few days, so she can just about see the seabed. Glittering sediment catches the sun here and there like tiny pieces of treasure. Bubbles rise as she kicks downwards, and in the corner of her eye, she sees Ollie diving down to the right. She doesn't follow him, though, and instead veers to the left. Soon towers of buildings rise to her side in strange reefs, and she counts them as she passes in a sequence she's imprinted to memory. The town is like a ghost, faded rows of concrete swallowed whole by the rising sea, a grey snapshot of the world before. Yet it's beautiful in its way, and will always remind her of the fragility of things. Still, life continues to beat within the cracks. Kelp clings and hold fast to jutting rocks, while fish swim in and out of broken windows or rotting doors. She never could imagine living in a permanent home like that. The Gaia is all she's ever known, beyond the floating islands they sometimes visit on trading stops. Growing up, she and Ollie dove and explored these long-gone towns, looking for hidden treasures. Her cabin on the Gaia is filled with items from the world before, memories her descendants left behind, sun-dried pages from waterlogged books that she sticks to her wall to try and fill in the gaps of the stories within, chipped porcelain cups with bright designs that she uses for planting herbs and flowers, plastic toys and broken electronics, and a wooden cat statue that looks just like Marsden. He likes to come into her room sometimes just to stare at it with an inquisitive look for a while, before curling up at the end of her bed. For now, she passes the towering buildings without stopping to search for trinkets. After counting the 8th row, she traverses a side street, kicks out against the current for a few more minutes, then breaks into the open sea again. In the distance, the seagrass meadow looms like a field of emeralds dazzling in the sun, and her body bubbles with excitement and adrenaline. When she and Ollie first visited this meadow, they sunk down into it. They lay in the seagrass together until their oxygen supply ran out, watching as the sun cast silhouettes on the dappled water above. When fish swam by, they traced shape in the water with bubbles, and the curious creatures followed the pattern as if dancing. After that dive, she and Ollie sat on the crow's nest together watching the stars above, wrapped up warm in seagrass-woven blankets and drinking hand-cut kelp soup. When a shooting star passed above, Ollie told her to close her eyes and make a wish, and she wished then and there that she could be a seedseeker. Since then, it had been all she'd ever wanted. Ollie never told her what he wished for, but when she opened her eyes, he was already looking over her with his wide smile, the moon reflecting a dash of silver in his green-eyed gaze. Then he took her hand and placed something cold in her palm. Ailish looked down and thumbed the grey stone, round and smooth, with a hole in its centre. "What's this for?" she asked, frowning. "It's a magic stone," he said. "I found it in the seagrass beds today." "It's beautiful." She made to hand it back to him, but he shook his head. "It's for you. A gift." She smiled. "What did I do to deserve a friend like you?" He didn't reply straight away. He just kept looking at her with an odd expression, almost like Marsden when he was looking at the cat statue. Then Ollie guided her hand gently upwards so that the hole in the stone faced the night sky above. "If you look through it, to the stars, it will help you see into the other world," he explained. Ailish nodded slowly. "I hope it helps my wish come true." "Mine too," he replied as she clutched the stone. "Thank you," she whispered, and she leaned into his shoulder, feeling the beat of his heart in rhythm with the waves sloshing below. She stayed there with Ollie all night until the sun rose red with the dawn, thinking of magic, strange worlds beyond the stars, and what her future might look like. Now she's searching for that answer. All she needs is a single seed, and her destiny will be secured. Her job will be, forevermore, a seed-seeker. She will spend her days diving into the blue, searching for seagrass seeds, then replanting them in meadows new and old, so that when she returns as the ship does its yearly rounds, the meadows will grow and grow. Though she wasn't alive for what happened before, the Gaia is working to undo some of the damage of the past, and so this job feels like a purpose she was born for. Now, as she swims forward, she can feel the hug of the sea around her, urging her on, welcoming her to this underwater world with open arms. At the seagrass meadow, she slows to scan the area. The first thing she picks up will determine her fate. She dives closer to the seabed, searching for the perfect spot. When she reaches the older plants growing together in thick clumps, she stops and is about to dig into the sand when something else catches her eye. A round stone with a hole bored in the middle, just like the one Ollie got her. She reaches for it, holds the smooth coldness in her palm, and just like that, her fate is decided. Her heart sinks as she realizes her error. Now the weight of water pushing down on her feels less like an embrace but a curse. She doesn't want to swim back up anymore, to face her crew, to be assigned her fate. The thought crosses her mind that she could leave the stone, find a seed instead, and no one would ever know. But she would know. This stone was the first thing she touched, and that is the rule they live by. Even if she lied, she knows that in time the guilt would swallow her whole, just like the sea swallowed the sunken cities. She looks up, her breath hitching in her throat as panic rises, but there's nothing to do but to swim home and face her captain. Ollie, the rest of the crew, and her future. She rises to the surface with a loud puff of air, and the sounds of clapping and cheers follow. She doesn't feel like celebrating. She scans the Gaia. She's first back. Dejected and cold, she climbs up to the deck. When Marsden curls his body around her ankle in greeting, she pushes him away, but it just makes her guilt grow as he sits just beyond her reach, scowling in silent judgment. One by one, the others arrive. Ollie's hand is closed over a clump of sand. Runa has an old brass compass and brandishes it with a wide smile. Then there's Sammy with a small fish magnet that catches the sun and reflects a rainbow prism of light on the Gaia's deck. All of them are out of breath, but none look unhappy. Ollie waves at her, trying to catch her eye, but she keeps clutching her stone to her chest and looking to the sky, avoiding his gaze, avoiding looking at what else lies in a clump of sand in his hand. The captain calls Ailish forwards first, and head bowed she approaches and holds out her hand. "A seer stone," the captain says after a moment. "A rare find." Ailish looks up. "What does it mean?" "Why do you look so worried?" Ailish chews her salt-dry lips. Then she looks to Ollie, who's still grinning. Between his fingers, a tiny thread of seagrass glistens. She sighs. "I wanted to be a Seedseeker, but now that's Ollie and there's no place for me." The captain laughs softly and puts a hand on Ailish's shoulder. Then, from her pocket, she takes out a piece of dried seagrass thread and loops it into the stone to make a necklace. "You two have always done everything together, as one, so why would we change that now?" She ties the stone so that it rests above Ailish's heart. "To keep you both safe, Seedseekers." Ailish looks around at her crew. Ollie cocks his head with a telling look, as if he knew this was how it would always end, that no matter what, they'd stay together, as if he wished it long ago and now it was so. "Wait," she says, looking at him, and she takes the necklace off. From her pocket, she takes out the seer stone that Ollie gave her years before, that she's always kept in her pocket to remind her of wishes, other worlds, and destiny. And she understands now, to remind her of him. She swaps the stones out, then loops some thread around the new one. She holds it in the air first and looks through it towards Ollie on the other side, realizing that maybe destiny and magic has many shapes. She steps up to Ollie, and he leans in as she lifts it over his neck. "To keep you safe, Seedseeker," she repeats the captain's words. And for a long moment he just looks at her with that stupid smile of his freckles like constellations on his cheeks, his eyes as green as the meadows beneath the sea. Then he's leaning forwards, his hands on her arms, and she kisses him. His lips taste of salt and sea, and she drinks in the feeling, the same feeling of the sea's warm embrace, and she's never been surer of her choice than in this moment. After, she loops her arm around Ollie's and she turns rosy-cheeked to the now smiling crew. "About time," the captain says, and the others laugh. As the captain continues the ceremony with Runa and Sammy, Marsden curls around their ankles, and Ailish looks to Ollie, who just shrugs and pulls her in closer. Their fate assigned, together the crew of the Gaia hold their talismans as they look out to the sea and salute the horizon. Tomorrow her future begins, but tonight they celebrate.
Thank you for listening to the Salt and Mirrors and Cats podcast. I'm your host, Carrie Seabrook. The story you heard today was Seedseeker by Lyndsey Croal, with voice acting by the author herself. To find out more about Lyndsey's work, please see the links in our show notes. Today's special thank you goes to all the authors who have participated in our zine. We can't wait to share your stories with our readers and listeners. Salt and Mirrors and Cats. We'll share the good luck.